All right. FCA 454, week 8. Lecture, the history of repeat patterns. Can everybody see that okay? You should have just the screen of my first slide. Look okay? Let me just find the chat. Yay, good. Okay. So, FCA 454, week 8. The history of repeat patterns. So, today we're going to talk about the history and use of repeat patterns. From the earliest dawn of civilization, people have decorated pottery tools and cave walls with repetitive motifs. Egyptian and Mesopotamian patterns were used in textiles, pottery, and architecture, and they often carried symbolic meaning. This is a glass mosaic relief. It is Egyptian from the Ptolemaic era, so late 4th to 3rd century BCE, and it's glass. It absolutely blows my mind that we have material culture fragments like this that have been around for so long. Because I don't know about you, but I break a glass every week. And the fact that this thing has managed to survive so long, and it's so beautiful, like there was a sophisticated glass-making technology back then, and we have record of it, is quite amazing. And this is from the collection of the Metropolitan Museum in New York City. So the classical era were Greek and Roman times. The complex repeat patterns were in mosaics, architecture, and textiles. This is the acanthus leaf, Acanthus, which was a very common motif in classical design. This is a wall mosaic, and I, as you know, have many obsessions, and one of them right now is Herculaneum and Pompeii, which you may know of as two ancient Roman cities that were basically buried under a volcano eruption. When Vesuvius erupted, it, it basically entombed all the people and all of their material goods, and it became this beautiful time capsule. Like, it was a horrific incident, but the visual record we have left of their homes is unbelievable. And the level of sophistication and taste levels in their design, I just think it is so gorgeous. And so they, yeah, there were these physical records that are basically like little pockets of air where bodies were, and they filled them with plaster. And then they found, as mentioned, like there were people holding on to each other. There were people holding on to their kids. There was these animals that were still tied up. Like, it was just like unbelievable. But really interesting and amazing records of the visual culture that was very much active in this culture in Pompeii and Herculaneum. And they were right on the ocean. So it was maritime culture. So look at the intricacy of the mosaics of these animals, right? This particular mosaic has 23 different species in the house of L. Aelius Magnus. And so again, this would be a mosaic that was done in little tiles on the wall. This is from the House of Punished Love. And I think this one is in Pompeii. And it's called that because there was one of the the frescoes, like where you paint on the wall with the wet paint into the wall, and it lasts quite a long time, was an image of Cupid being punished by his mother. And she was mad at him. And that was House of Punished Love. That's not this image, but it is from that same house. And so we have all this really pretty amazing visual record of this little snapshot of life. there is little Cupid who's being punished because he is shooting his arrows and causing trouble for other people. So beautiful wall ornaments and really interesting slice of history. These are actually commercial. These are not from the era. You can buy Roman mosaic tiles, and I want to do my, do a part of my house, maybe like the back or something, with these mosaics because they're so lovely. And they're all based on the actual things that were found. Okay, now we're heading over to Islam and looking at the arabesque design movements. And within Islam decorative traditions, they were quite aligned with mathematical and patterns. And so the complexity came together in the surface design. They were intricate, they were non-representational, and they often had spiritual significance. And this is actually carved into stone. Like it is a repeating pattern, but it is like unbelievable the level of skill that has gone into this particular carving. This is, I believe, the inside ceiling of a mosque. And again, the intricacy of the pattern is quite wonderful, and the expertise in the execution. This is a textile from around 1650, and it is a woven. So this is a fabric. And again, the intricacy of the detail and the ornamentation is just mind-blowing. The Metropolitan Museum has a really nice collection of Islamic art, which we should get on the jet and we should go there to look at up close, because it's wonderful going into museums and researching these historical documents up close. Okay, now we're heading to the Middle Ages and the Renaissance. There was the rise of mass production of certain patterns. A lot of it was still inspired by classical motifs. But we got into places like Florence, which was very much a cloth town. And this is a silk velvet. So it's cut away and it's plush where the blue is. And then it's got a flatter ground on it. And it's made out of silk. And the textile industry was a huge driver of the Florentine economy. And it was a very lucrative business and it was very valuable. Like people would leave their textiles to family members in their will. And you would often get married in a trousseau, like your beautiful wedding ensemble, and then it would be taken apart because it was considered part of family property. Textiles were so valuable because of, it takes a lot of silk to make a woven like this. And this is pre-industrial revolution, so it's all done with manual technologies, which blows my mind. Same idea. This is a silk velvet furnishing fabric from around late 1500s, cut and uncut velvet, and it's woven in silk and metal thread. And this is from the Victoria and Albert Museum, which also has a lot of phenomenal textiles in its collection in London, England. So beautiful motifs and definitely a major driver of the economy, particularly in Florence. And this is from, what's the year on this? Anyway, I can't see the bottom of my slide, but again, those are all woven into the fabric. It is not painted. This is a woven velvet textile, and it is very beautiful. This is Eleonora de Toledo. Sorry, I was writing about Isabel Toledo, so I have her on the brain. Eleonora de Toledo with her son This is from 1503. Oh, actually, no, mid 1500s. She was born 1503. Okay, so we're probably about the 15, maybe around 15, late 1520s, 1520s, maybe around 1530. And again, that is a woven velvet, and you can see how the pattern design on the garment is a huge aspect of the design of the whole ensemble, right? Like it is all about that pattern. And she was a wealthy tastemaker of her era, and there are several other um, portraits of her in equally splendid. There's one in a red velvet dress that is quite remarkable. So she would have been an influencer of her era. Baroque and Rococo. I am a particular lover of the Baroque and the Rococo, which is a European art movement. A lot of the inspiration came from France, pre-revolution France in the late, I'd say most of the 1700s was the Baroque era, and then Rococo was from around 1750 onwards. And this is a over-the-top, more is more kind of design movement, the Rococo. My maximalists in the class will definitely be living for this. This is actually British, I believe. And it is a dress with panniers, so it's got those large panels on the side. And this was not woven. I'm pretty sure that that was all hand embroidered. The panels on the back of those two panels down the middle may have been woven. This, I'm pretty sure, was all hand embroidered, which is even more amazing when you consider the time and the expertise that goes into something like that. This is a design by a woman named Anna Maria Garthwaite, and she was British, and she was interesting because she was someone who was, her profession was a textile designer in the mid 1700s. She ran her own business. She was an independent contractor who designed the most gorgeous fabrics. And there's all kinds of Garthwaite fabrics that show up in paintings. They show up in sample books. And she was really gifted with her talents, and she also was a gifted business person. So it's interesting to have someone operating independently during this era who was a woman, because legally there were a lot of issues around that. So it's quite amazing. Okay, then we have the Industrial Revolution. We have the rise of the machine. And I would say the domestic arts became much more widespread. They became more affordable. But like everything, there's always reactions to movements. And the William Morris, as a designer, he reacted to the Industrial Revolution, even though he was a business person. Like he made his money off of it. But he was designing almost in a retro way in the era. Okay, because in the mid 1800s, we had the invention of some synthetic dyes like Movine, which gave us the purple. And all of a sudden, purple, which had been a royal color, was available to everybody. William Morris reacted to that, and he wanted to have things that were made more like with natural dyes. So in his design motifs, it was supposed to look back almost to medieval, right? So now we have the emergence of things like wallpaper, which you can actually produce in an industrial society. It becomes another product. And so where there's a product, there's someone marketing it. And wallpaper kind of grew as a decorative art during the Industrial Revolution era. This is more William Morris. This was a furnishing fabric. This blows my mind. I love this wallpaper with the peacock. I would love this on my house. It's as big, like you can put this on your wall. And quite dramatic. So now we get into the modern era, the 20th century. We have Art Nouveau and Art Deco. This is Deco, and I find this interesting because the repeat is actually woven into the textile of the dress. Okay, like it's not applied after, it is literally woven into this tennis dress from 1926. This is from the 1940s, so now we're like getting into the mid-century era, and Charles and Ray Eames were a husband and wife team of designers who designed during the 40s, 50s, and 60s, and Ray Eames was a very talented textile designer, and this is some of her work. So things are getting much more quirky and modern than what we've seen up until now. These are various textiles from England, and these are from the Victoria and Albert collection, and they are 50s and 60s for sure. These are by Lucienne Day. So Lucienne Day, she was a textile and surface designer from the 1950s, and I love her kind of line work style with those kind of graphic blocks of color. And her work always looked like this. Like she just sort of, through her whole career, she had this kind of vibe to it. And, you know, if people are looking at a Lucienne Day textile, they usually identify it as hers. And really lovely and has that very mid-century feeling for me. When I talk about mid-century, it's kind of like Mad Men era, 1950s, early 1960s in America and around the world, really. And I collect mid-century, so it's something that I quite like. Now we're getting into the 60s. We're mind-altering substances, and the surface design reflected that for sure. This is from 1969. I think that the original moon landing was around 68, maybe. And so they decided to commemorate this rocket era with this furnishing fabric, which I think is wild, and I would like it on my sofa. Now we get into the modern era, which is the digital era. And so much of what is done in surface design is done in Illustrator and Photoshop, for sure. This was definitely Illustrator, and you can see the line work that's very Illustrator, and those blocks of color definitely were done in some sort of vector program. This is fun. Little turntables and cassettes. Again, quite a nice vector repeat feeling of this. And I wouldn't say textile design at this point because we're getting into like wallpaper in the modern term, which is something that's used on a website. Digital design has become so much a part of the decorative arts. This is for sure Illustrator. This I actually downloaded from WGSN. They have some textile resources that are quite cool. So this I thought was great. And it is 100% Illustrator. Same with these. I've got a whole bunch of digital designs now to inspire you in your textile designs. And these were all definitely cooked up in Illustrator. You can do representational for sure. You can do abstract. It's totally up to you what you want to design this week. And Illustrator has a very distinctive design look to it. It's those nice hard edges, very clean, and they make for some very satisfying surface designs, I find. Great colors. You've got basically unlimited color choices at this point, so don't be afraid to get into the color. This has kind of a 1980s throwback vibe to it. More romantic. I think that's the Zodiac. That one's got some gradation happening in the background, and then the motifs on top. if you design a repeat that has a design in it but doesn't have a background, it'll basically be transparent, which I will demo once we've finished this lecture. Now we talk about colorways. So this is an example of colorways of the same design. So you're going to design 4 of them, different colorways of the same repeat pattern, right? And I always find it so interesting how different things will look depending on the color choices that you have chosen for it. This is some of my work. As I said, am obsessed with pattern. And this is one I did last week. So I've got my colorways happening of my repeat. This I actually did in Photoshop, but I could have done it in Illustrator. I just sort of had to have done a photo image of my more textural original tile. This is some of my digital work. It's kind of inspired by rubber stamps for this one. And this is a GIF that I made of one of my florals of the various colorways of my abstract flower design. Again, it always excites me how different your design can look depending on the colorways that you cook it up in. All right, so that is our lecture for today and the history of repeat patterns.